everyone. Ooh, got my glasses on today. They're brand new. Oh, no lights. What? Okay, we're good. Oh, look, my makeup mirror's behind me. Here, how about that? Okay. So this is intuitive eating. This is so distracting. Okay, there, that's better. This is intuitive eating talk number 4, and we're going to talk about the third principle of intuitive eating, which is making peace with food. This is a very exciting principle. It's one of my favorites because it has everything to do with the brain. We are really starting to talk about the brain and how it is involved in our eating and our belief systems once we start talking about making peace with food. What does making peace with food even mean? Making peace with food is allowing yourself, I know you're going to go crazy when I say this, just bear with me. It is allowing yourself unconditional permission to eat food, any food. Allowing yourself permission to eat food. The reason why this is so important is the principle of deprivation. So last time I talked about biological deprivation and what it can do to our bodies. It completely messes everything up. So you have a drive to eat, right? So any restriction or deprivation turns on your metabolism craziness. It turns on all of our bodies functioning to just like try and look for food. We get consumed with it, okay? But there's another factor in that. So we talked about honoring your hunger. That's really important. The other factor is the psychological deprivation. Has anyone ever told you that you can't do something and you immediately wanted to do that thing even more when maybe you didn't even care about that thing beforehand? Someone said, I bet you can't do that, or you're not cut out for that. Immediately something in your brain goes, oh yes, I can. That's what happens with psychological deprivation. There's been tons of studies where people have been deprived of something. It can be really simple, and then all of a sudden they're craving that thing like crazy. So especially with food, I know that you guys have probably been on a million diets. I've been on a million diets. When I was on the grapefruit diet, the only thing I wanted was bread. It's the only thing I wanted. When I'm on a sugar-free diet, the only thing I want are chocolate-covered blueberries or like an orange, right? When I was on Weight Watchers, oh my gosh, I don't know what it was with bread, but I would eat just plain bread, 4 pieces of plain bread, 6 pieces of plain bread. I don't do that now. It's not a big deal to me. I don't care about bread because I can have it. I know you guys have experienced that. So if you start on a diet and then all of a sudden you're supposed to restrict a particular thing, it's the only thing your mind is consumed with. Not only that, when you do start to eat that food, then you go crazy on it. You binge on it. You last supper that food like crazy. And that is the cycle of psychological deprivation. And it's a real thing. It's insane. So when you kind of become a different person when you feel deprived of something, you are just going for that thing. You don't care about anything else, right? I'd love to know what your food rules are, because we all have food rules that play into this. Mine were, I couldn't have any sugar. I had to have low carbs and no fat. So what did I think about? Sugar and carbs. That's the only thing I thought about. And not just regular sugar and carbs. I'm talking like cinnamon rolls, cake, candy, ice cream. That's what I binged on. So now that I have access to all that food, I don't ever eat it. I do have some chocolate once in a while. I like something sweet at the end of the day, but it's not something where I can't keep it in my house. So I want to know if anybody has ever had that experience of not being able to keep something in your house because you're afraid you're going to binge on it. Or maybe you believe that you can't have just one bite of that thing. Maybe your belief is, I can't keep Snickers bars in my house because if I have one bite, I'm going to finish the whole bag. Well, it's true because you're depriving yourself of that thing. I believed that about going to my parents' house because they always keep a bag of Snickers, fun-sized Snickers bars. And I thought, if I just see those Snickers bars, I'm going to eat the whole bag. And so I would secretly maneuver and situate the bag so that it was hidden so no one would know that I was eating all these Snickers bars. Now when I go to my parents' house, I'm like, oh, Snickers. I don't really feel like a Snickers right now. Because I honestly don't feel like a Snickers right now. Not because I've deprived myself of that food and now I have to have it. So this is where the beautiful brain comes in. This is a psychological principle. It's a neurological principle where if we feel deprived of something, we feel like someone is taking away our autonomy, we are all of a sudden psychologically programmed to crave and want those things. And we will think about those things nonstop. We become obsessed with those things. There's tons of studies on this. You're not the only one. So if you're on a low carb diet and the only thing you can think about is bread and potatoes, you are not the only one. It's because you're depriving yourself of that thing. Now, have you ever heard of habituation? Yes? No? Habituation is when you're exposed to something so much, then you become habituated to it. You don't care about it anymore and it doesn't affect you. We can become habituated to all kinds of things. And this principle is so important when we allow ourselves the opportunity to intuitively eat. When I teach people this principle of making peace with food, people freak out because they're like, hey, Tangi, yay. They freak out because they're like, well, I'm just going to eat everything and I'm never going to stop. And I have to reassure them, listen, there have been hundreds and hundreds of studies that show when people are allowed to eat food, that anything is available to them, their habits will go toward nutritionally dense food. They will regulate their eating. But the first thing they have to do is allow themselves to have access to the foods that they've never had. Yes, they're going to, and I do the same. I typically eat really nutritious foods, but I also eat plate foods. I also eat chocolate if I want to, or I have wine if I want to, whatever I want. But I also know what makes my body feel good. I know because I've allowed myself to practice with those things. Whereas before, I never allowed myself trust. I thought I was completely out of control and I could not trust myself. I couldn't trust my body to make decisions. And if I had access to all these bad foods, then I would just eat them all and I wouldn't care, right? I wouldn't care about any of that. Okay, listen, I know it's a hard concept to swallow, but the opposite is true. The opposite is true. When you allow yourself to have access unconditionally to food and you allow yourself to eat food, you can make peace with it. You start trusting yourself. Then you start making good decisions. Here's the thing. You cannot conceptually know something without experientially knowing it and attempt to practice it, right? I can tell you a million times that this is how it works. But until you understand experientially, bite by bite, and give yourself unconditional permission to eat, you will not understand the principle and you will not take a risk on yourself and trust yourself with food. Now, if we rewound 5 years, 10 years especially, but 5 years, and you told me, Summer, I want you to give yourself unconditional permission to eat, I would have said, well, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. I don't have any self-control. Like, my life would blow up. I can't do that. So I understand if you don't want to believe because you've been stuck in a habit of restricting and not allowing yourself to eat for so long. I get it. I really do. But I'm here to tell you that habituation is a real thing. Think about it like this. When you put a toddler on the ground with a room full of brand new toys and you tell him the only thing you can't play with is that old toy, is that old carton of oatmeal, okay, whatever it is. What is the one thing he wants to play with more than anything? That one toy that you told him he couldn't have. That's what he wants. It's the exact same thing with us and food. When you allow yourself to have permission to eat, that all goes away. So what are your food rules? Tell me, what don't you allow yourself to have? And where are those coming from? And what would happen if you truly, truly took those away? And you didn't have to rebound diet and you didn't always have a last supper and you had things available to you. I'm going to guarantee that once you allow yourself to have these forbidden foods, you might find that they don't taste quite as good as you thought they did, or they don't taste quite as good as they did when they were forbidden. And once you start allowing yourself permission to eat, you might find that you can choose anything you want without restriction you might start choosing things that make your body feel good. So I'm really wanting to hear what your food rules are. I want you to list them out. I want you to tell me, what is it that you've decided that you can't have? Is it that you can't eat past 6 o'clock? Is it that you can't have carbs? You can't have fat? You can't have insert thing. What food rules do you have? And then I would like to challenge you to allow yourself unconditional permission to eat. Allow yourself to make peace with yourself and with food. What if you weren't scared of food anymore? What if you could go to a restaurant and choose what you wanted based on what your body needed or wanted to experience, not based on what you tell yourself you can't have? Think about if you've ever been on a cruise, when you go to a buffet, the first night people are loading up on all kinds of different desserts because they've been dieting for this cruise. They have not allowed themselves to eat any sugar of any kind. So they are loading up their plates with desserts, right? And so you've got like 4 different desserts on your plate, and then you go back and you have the sundae bar. Well, by the end of the week, you might notice that people aren't doing that anymore. They're taking their time, and maybe they're choosing the yummiest dessert, or maybe they're not having one at all because it's available. They don't feel like it anymore. So consider these thoughts. Allow them to ruminate in your brain. This is the key component to breaking through that horrible cycle of dieting, is allowing yourself permission and starting to trust yourself. So tell me what your food rules are. I want to know what your questions are. What are your concerns? What are you afraid of? And message me, let me know. And I'm going to figure out a way to post this on IGTV. I don't know how to save my Facebook lives, and I don't know how to publish them. And so we'll see if this works. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I think you're amazing. I believe in you. If I can do this, then you can do this. If I can change my brain and my beliefs, then you can change your brain and your beliefs. And remember, if you believe something, you're going to self-sabotage and make it true. So I'd like to invite you to consider changing your beliefs around who you are, around trust, around self-control, and around your potential. All right, I'll talk to you soon. I'm going to try and record number 4 to number 5. I don't know. I've lost track. I don't know what date it is. Something will happen later today. Okay. Mwah. Thanks, guys.